Cuse. I do. That Villanova game was so great. Happy New Year, Syracuse fans, and welcome to the Upstate Orange Podcast, recorded live inside the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. It's Thursday, January 2nd, 2014, and tonight we're going to be talking about Syracuse's wins over Villanova in Eastern Michigan, how incredible Jim Boeheim has been against non-conference opponents in regular season games, 65-2 over the last 5 seasons if you're counting.
They haven't played anybody, Jim.
The 2 losses? Anybody?
Oh, you wrote them down. So
2 losses.
One of them was a half-court shot. And
Temple's one, right?
Yep, Temple last year. And the other one was a half-court shot going back a few years.
Which?
As a matter of fact, if you put on Verk's camera there, Jeremy, those 2 pictures are from that game.
Cleveland State?
Yep, that's right.
Was that the opening game one year?
I don't think it was the opener, but it was a half-court shot, and so it took a half-court shot for one of those losses. But yeah, we're going to talk about all that and some great Syracuse basketball trivia and a preview of our impending ACC conference schedule. I'm Jim Sinacropi, along with my co-host, William and Mary's second all-time leading three-point shooter, right? You've been bested on the leaderboard there.
Still hanging in there, too, though.
Matt Verke. And also the head coach of Jim Boeheim's high school alma mater, Zach Young, back in studio. Welcome back, Zach.
Hey, Jim.
And our resident college basketball guru via telephone in Cincinnati, Brad Connor. Good evening, Brad.
Happy New Year, gentlemen.
Do you enjoy being called a guru?
I don't know if I deserve that title, but yeah, it's not so bad.
We've never really discussed it. I just kind of say it every week. But you are a guru, Brad. Of all my people I know, when it comes to college basketball, I call you a guru. So the Upstate
I do appreciate that.
The Upstate Orange Podcast is brought to you by Generations Bank, with locations in Auburn, Geneva, Phelps, Seneca Falls, Union Springs, and Waterloo. Be sure to check out their mobile banking app or visit them online at mygenbank.com. And Seneca Meadows, responsible waste management for the next generation. Learn more online at senecameadows.com. And by Madej, Miras, and Ricky, your hometown personal injury attorneys. If you've been injured and deserve compensation, call the Finger Lakes Personal Injury Hotline at 315-568-0911 or visit them online at madejmirasricky.com. All right, Syracuse is a perfect 13-0 after outscoring Villanova by 34 over the final 32 minutes of their win in the Dome on Saturday afternoon, and wrapping up the non-conference portion of their schedule with a New Year's Eve victory over Rob Murphy-led Eastern Michigan. Let's talk all about it with our Big 5 questions. So question 1. Who's better than the Cuse? Anybody in the country better than the Cuse? Come on. Last week, Brad and I, on a special Sunday night edition, debated whether Ennis was better than Michael Carter-Williams for this team. And, overall, Brad said he needed to see Ennis in Syracuse on a big stage against a big-time team, like a number 8 ranked team like Villanova was. So, Brad, let me ask you this question first. Who's better than the Cuse?
You can make a case that Arizona's better than Syracuse.
Well, how about you, Verk? What is anybody better than the Cuse?
I think there's I kind of talked about this a little before. I think there's 5 to 8 teams that are all pretty good, and it's still early to say necessarily who, if anybody's better than the Cuse. But I like their chances at this point. They having a much better season than I thought they would starting out. The play of Ennis, everybody's been playing well. We're having a little technical difficulties here. What do you think, Brad?
I think there's, like you say, there's 3 or 4, 5 teams probably that could make that case. Until we see a lot of head-to-head action with a lot of these top teams, I don't think we'll know beyond the shadow of a doubt, but I think we have seen everything we probably need to see to know that this is an elite team this season. There's no question about that.
Well, Zach, Let me ask you, what do you think about it? Is Syracuse the best team in the country right now?
Yeah, I think in the tournament they definitely got a shot. Arizona's pretty impressive when I've seen them. I've watched them 2 or 3 times. I watched Ohio State the other night. I think they're a pretty good team, and I know Wisconsin's having a good year. I kind of like Syracuse chances versus them, but it's so the tournament, the way it's set up. Anybody gets hot, you make your run. Look at Syracuse last year. I wouldn't think that anybody really thought we were going to get to the Final Four going into that tournament. And but
Jim had them winning it all.
Yeah, except for Jim. But they're they got a lot of pieces right now.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I've said it before. Arizona's impressive. We'll match up against Arizona. We'll win that game. It's because of our system and the players in it right now that our program's the best, and we are the best team in the country.
My concern with this team is when teams are going to shut out Cooney, where are they going to get some outside shooting from?
But they've won a couple games this year where that's been the case against quality opponents.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question, but C.J. Fair can step out and hit the 3. Ennis has proven he can shoot it, and Benajay's improving a little bit from long range. But there's one stat that I really like, and that's that Syracuse has played 6 games against big time conference opponents. The major conferences.
BCS.
Yeah, BCS opponents so far this year, and their combined record of the opponents in that game is 33-9. But if you take away the 6 Syracuse games, their record's 39-3. So we beat 6 teams who have a combined record 39-3. I don't know. Everybody keeps saying they need to play somebody. I guess until we play North Carolina and Duke.
No, I think they've played as good a schedule as anybody else in the country.
One of their best non-conference schedules I can remember in a long time.
And I didn't think they'd be at 13-0 at this point in the season. I don't think anybody did. It's very impressive. And I guess that leads me. Go ahead, Bram.
Well, I was going to say, I think the one thing that they don't have, the one notch on their belt right now that they don't have, is a good road win in somebody else's gym. Arizona has that. They won at Michigan. Obviously, they beat Duke in a neutral floor. Still an excellent win.
It was an East Coast game, too. That was more of a Duke home game.
And that's not taking anything away from those victories because they're great victories. But until they go to somebody's gym and do it, I think that's I'd like to see. That would prove to me that they are the best team in the land.
Well, we'll get to see it shortly because the ACC conference is kicking into gear, and we're going to be going on the road quite a bit to a lot of new venues. But talking about if we're the best team in the country this year, let's kind of kick it up another notch and look at it from another level. 65-2 versus non-conference opponents over the last 5 seasons. 51 straight non-conference victories at home. Coming off a Final Four last year and Elite 8 the year before that, how elite is Syracuse's program? Are we a top 5 program in the country? Are we the best program in the country over the last 5-6 years? Talking about the word elite, we're elite, aren't we? First of all,
yeah, I think we're definitely elite, and I think we are a top 5 program. The one thing that we're missing is those deep tournament runs. I know that they had one last year, but it was since 2003 since we made a Final Four. Boeheim makes one Final Four a decade, and these other schools are going 3, 4, 5 times in a decade. Michigan State, every player that's played for Tom Izzo in the last so many years has gone to a Final Four. And I think that's how programs get judged these days is making Final Four runs.
And I argue, about this a lot. We lost Onuaku and Fab Melo.
No doubt.
But when you're talking about elite program, to me, it means a certain level of relevance, especially as you're talking about January, February, March. You're top 5 during those months. You're in the media spotlight. You're always being talked about. And to me, to maintain that type of level over an extended period of time is what makes you elite. And, of course, national championships and Final Fours are very important, and we've got more than most of both, even with just one.
I wouldn't say more than most.
More than most Division I programs. Or more than most.
But if you look at, how many Final Fours does Duke or North Carolina, Kentucky,
Well, those are 3 programs, But
Well, we're talking elite. We're
Right.
talking best of the best, And
Well, what I'm thinking is that we got, the law of averages. We got a nice stretch coming up here over the next maybe 5-6 years, and so Zach, what do you think about this program? Where do we stack up against the other programs in the country?
I'd say top 5. We're recruiting well lately. I think that's the biggest thing within the last couple of years. Since Carmelo came, they kind of had a little lull after, but we're getting some of the big recruits, and we have some system guys. Trevor Cooney obviously is a system guy, but I think what Matt said is right on spot. You got to make deep runs. And have they had some bad luck? Absolutely. The whole Fab Mello thing, Anawako getting hurt, but you just got to put a couple together. And I think they definitely have a great shot this year. As long as they can stay in the top, 5 top 10 teams, I think first 2 rounds are going to be in Buffalo for them, and then
MSG.
And if you get put in the East, then you're at the Garden. So
Beautiful thing.
that's you can't ask for a better motivating factor saying, hey, we got to keep winning. To basically you don't have to leave New York State until you go to the Final Four.
We won't get credit though for going to the Final Four that year because they'll all have been home games, is what they'll say.
hey, Duke plays in Greensboro every year, so
Yeah, tell me about it. Now, Brad, where do we rank program-wise in eliteness?
I would say there's a strong case to be made in top 5. When I saw this question come up, I rattled off the top of my head about 8 or 9 teams that could probably make the case for top 5 programs. You think
Louisville, Kentucky, Duke,
Michigan State.
State.
You got Louisville, you got Kentucky, you got UNC and Duke. I'd say Kansas is definitely part of that equation.
Sure.
I would say UConn, even though they've fallen out because they were on probation and they're now in the crappy American Conference, and Arizona's part of that equation, frankly, because I think even though they had a gap between Lute Olson and Sean Miller, I think they're back to where they were before. So I think Syracuse is part of probably an 8 or 9 team sort of elite tier of caliber teams and programs. What's funny to me, though, guys, when I think about this, the narrative on this program has completely changed over the last, I would say, 5 years. It was always Boeheim, he's a whiner, he's a choker, he can't do anything.
Yeah.
In the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, it's become Boeheim is one of the best coaches to teach defense. Their defense is one of the best in the country. Nobody can figure it out. That wasn't the narrative 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They were athletes, and they were get up and down the floor, and they were guys that were good college players, busts in the NBA. It's completely flipped.
Yeah, and a part of that is just when you win so many games, I think you have to give the guy respect. And of course, we do have the national championship, and you can't deny the the amount of wins in 20-win seasons. It's ridiculous for somebody to say that Jim Boeheim's not a good coach because there's just too many statistics to say otherwise. So, I agree with you there, Brad, on the narrative changing. But let's move ahead to question number 3. And you got something to say on 2?
Well, I was just looking at Final Four appearances. Syracuse has 5, along with with 5. Michigan, Illinois, Houston, and Georgetown also have 5. And then you got schools like Arkansas, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State have 6. But a lot of these schools are going back to the 50s and 60s when like you look at UCLA's got 17 Final Four appearances.
Oh yeah, but I mean they had 10 in a row, but.
Duke and Kentucky have 15 Final Four appearances. Yeah,
and again, a lot of those come in early. Not that Syracuse didn't field a team back then, but
right.
The program didn't blossom until
I would say a
Boeheim
team
came along.
like Louisville though is considered more elite than some of those schools now. Just
Louisville
the last couple of years.
Back-to-back Final Fours, and they got 10 total.
National championship.
3 national championships
coming off of last year, and which by the way, Chayton Bohannon off the team.
Yeah. You know what's impressive looking at this? Connecticut's got 4 Final Four appearances, and they won 3 titles.
Yeah, that is impressive. You can't deny certain things. That's really the only thing that kind of separates Syracuse and UConn are those national championships. Syracuse kind of has to me it's a fickle thing. Certain years, bad draws, little luck here and there. That's why I hate kind of. And maybe I'd feel different if Syracuse had 6 national titles, but to be honest with you, it's just so much. So much randomness.
I think our program's never been better.
Right.
Syracuse. This is it doesn't get much better than we've been. We've had some bad luck the last couple of years, but we're recruiting well, and the future's bright.
And it's fun to be a Syracuse fan. We like say we're
I think it kind
ultra relevant.
It coincides with the start of our Upstate Orange show.
I never thought about that. I'll have to.
I think we have something to do with that.
Well, let's move ahead to question number 3. And, an interesting thing. Against Eastern Michigan, Coleman's nursing his knee, so Jeremy Grant gets the start. He's active inside, scoring 9 of the first 11 points of the game. He's was making his first start of the season. Usually he's the guy Boeheim brings off the bench, 6-man. And, Boeheim even said in the postgame, he's like, Jeremy Grant won the game in the first 5 minutes. So I don't have any problem with Boeheim's strategy of bringing a guy off the bench, but I'm thinking maybe with Grant, maybe it doesn't, maybe he's not the right guy, or this isn't the right team to do that with. Why doesn't Jeremy Grant start? Boeheim said he won the game in the first 5 minutes. Maybe Villanova doesn't have that run against stuff if Grant's in there. Having Coleman and Christmas in there to start the game is obviously not our best 5. And what do you think, Zach, as a coach? You like Boeheim's strategy of bringing the guy off the bench, 6-man, or you want to start your best 5?
I say start your best 5. Boeheim, he has a history of doing this, so he kind of sticks with his starting 5 and doesn't really care what anybody thinks. And I think he just likes to kind of push people's buttons. And who finishes the game is what's more important. But Grant definitely looked. I think he was probably a little extra hyped up. He got to start. And, hey, if he keeps playing like that, how can you deny the guy from starting the game? I mean, he played great. And like he did, first 5 minutes, he was everywhere. And, he's got potential NBA caliber guy coming out. But he did it with Waiters, too. But I just say –
and Sutherland and Joseph.
Yeah, I just say I start my best 5.
Yeah, and I don't know, Verk, you got –
I think this is different than years past. I definitely think he should be starting. There's games, and Jim, I know you've wanted this all year long, and you're kind of, it's almost like Boeheim waits for Coleman or Christmas to screw up, and first time they do it, there's this excuse to get Grant in the game. I mean, why not just start him? It's kind of, we talked about this in years past too. It's like almost embarrassing for Coleman. He'll come in and he'll get blocked by a guard, or the guard will steal from him. They take him out with 19 minutes to go. And it's kind of, it's like, I'm just out here for the hell of it.
You're setting up for a bad start because, Coleman and Christmas aren't there. There's 2 of 5 guys on the court, so they're going to be touching the ball.
I think Coleman is a guy who might do well in the role coming off the bench, being like, hey, go in and we're getting killed on the board, send him in to go pound the board. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's different than years past where he had these big scorers coming off the bench and stuff like that. I just think, especially just from the other night, not that Grant's going to score 9 of the first 11 points every game, but they look much better. They're a better team with Grant on the floor.
The zone's better. Yeah. Their offense is better. You can't really take that away when he's in the game.
And I think it worked for a guy like James Sutherland, maybe more of a shooter, to look at the defense and come in when everybody's kind of a little winded. But I don't like it for Grant. Brad, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with most of what you guys have said. It's like in baseball, you want the guys in your rotation that are your best pitchers to pitch the most innings. You don't want your best pitcher being a middle reliever because he's not going to get as many innings. You don't want one of your best 5 players to not start the game because he, by default, is not going to get as many minutes, and that's contrary to what you're trying to do as a coach to get your best 5 on the floor as much as possible. There's something to be said for Jeremy Grant's an energy guy, and coming in when the defense is starting to get a little bit tired, and it gives him that much more of an advantage probably against the defense. So I get that part of it, but I don't know. I mean, it's like you guys said, it's embarrassing to see Coleman, lumber around for 2 minutes and then get yanked and not play the rest of the half. I mean,
and like Verk said, I think that Coleman is a great guy to insert off the bench to add and he'll give you 4 good minutes before he gets tired. So. But hopefully that knee's not too bad. It's nice to have that depth. It hasn't really mattered yet, but
I think my bold prediction for the week. I know I'm jumping ahead. Is that Grant's going to start the rest of the year.
Well, that's very bold because Boeheim would have to make that change, and I can see Grant starting another game or two if Coleman's knee's still banged up.
This is Coleman got banged up. Grant's played that one game starting. Grant started in the past. I think he's just going to go with it.
All right. Well, we'll find out what the starting lineup is against Miami. I haven't heard any word on if Coleman's going to be cleared to play or not. But moving ahead to question 4. Bingham had some things to say about the RPI this week. He said, I don't understand the whole strength of schedule and RPI. The more you look at it, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The other day before we beat Villanova, we were 15th in RPI. We play Villanova at home. You're supposed to win even though it's a tough game. We win the game and we go to number 1 in the RPI. You jump 14 places because of that. It doesn't make sense. The whole thing doesn't make sense. It never has. It's an awful tool for picking. Tell us exactly how you feel, Coach. And another example he gave was, he says, I think Louisville is 30. Boeheim continued and says it's nonsense. And actually, Louisville is even worse than 30th. And then he goes on, now he's on a roll. He says, it's math people playing with numbers that don't know anything about basketball. That's what the RPI is. So, fellas, the RPI is a tool for seeding in the NCAAs. So it is something that does matter to some extent. But, Brad, what do you think of the RPI?
So I'm a financial guy, and
Right.
for me, data is good. Anytime you can use data to help make a case, it's better than not having data. And so I think the RPI reflects some way to normalize teams that don't play against one another, don't play the same schedules, don't play the same home and away. I think it helps judge when you don't necessarily have the eye test available to you. Now, that said, I think it's just one data point, and it shouldn't be the end-all, be-all. I don't think that the committee uses it as really the key determinant for seeding, for tournament selection. It's just one of many factors, I think. So in that vein, I think it's probably a good thing to use. I think they have making it seem like it's more of a huge determinant in something nationally that it's really not, I don't think, at least at this point in the season.
Something's got to be wrong with it because they got Duke 36, so that just can't be possible.
Well, yeah, we all agree Duke's not the 36th best team in the country, but they did lose the 2 games. All opinion being aside, what you do on the floor is the only thing that matters, and it's supposed to measure that.
I got the RPI up right now, and it's just, there's an offensive quotient, defensive quotient, adjusted scoring margin, record last 12 games, record against RPI 51 to 100. It really throws a lot. I mean, it's all relevant stats, but it's crazy kind of. But, I think it's meaningful to some aspect. But, the fact that Syracuse goes from 15 to 1 based on one game is kind of crazy, I think.
Like, it's just like what Brad says, just an evaluation tool.
Yeah.
And when you get down in the nitty-gritty, that's just one thing I think it's just one of the many tools that they look at. And I wish they would have more, ex-coaches and guys that follow the game, or even some of those broadcasters. Put them in. I think that would be great. Put one of the CBS guys and one of the ESPN guys in, and let them. Then they can go back and talk about the whole process.
Billis and Gottlieb can just pick the whole field.
Yeah, I mean,
I love Billis. Arizona's 10 in the RPI though. It's
well, my take on it is
who's number 1 off the top?
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
See, I mean, right there.
Well,
Syracuse is 2.
Massachusetts has 1 loss.
They're 11-1.
They're
0-0 against the top 25 though. 0-0. They haven't
so
played
it
the
is.
top 25
How do they
team.
get to be number 1?
I don't know.
If maybe blowing
I don't
teams
know if
out.
we're arguing against
Yeah,
the
put margin
intent
of
and the
victory.
theory of the RPI or just the way it's calculated, because to me they're two different arguments. It sounds like they're using criteria for the equation that probably isn't nearly as relevant in terms of identifying the best team, and so you fine-tune the equation. I don't think throwing it out, I don't think is necessarily the answer. I think you just make it better.
Well, unlike the BCS, for example, I think the RPI doesn't take into account preseason rankings, which really are just opinion, which is a good thing. But one trait I'd like to see the RPI follow from the BCS is don't release it, until later in the season. Like right about now would be a good time for the first RPI to come out. January 1st, maybe after all the pre-conference schedules are done, maybe you release an RPI then. But it's just a thing for fans and of the sport, and obviously for the NCAA committee to look at and to help them make sense of things. And I don't think they're going to look at that RPI right off the top. I think when it comes down to a couple teams for who's going to be the 4 seed in the West, or who's going to be the 65th seed, or I guess the 70th seed now, or however many teams they have in the tournament. But where they might compare two teams, and then look at the RPI, and if there is a big disparity, they might look closer as to why. So.
William Mary's 193, just for the record.
And they're 7-5.
RPI. Yeah. It's not a, however, there's 300-something teams, 351 teams.
Would you think they should be higher?
No.
So they're right about perfect, right about in the middle of D1. But they are 7-5. They picked up a nice win the other night.
Beat Old Dominion last night.
Yeah.
Huge win.
So, RPI's here to stay. No doubt about that, no matter what Boeheim says. But moving ahead to question 5. One thing that scares me right now is we're playing so good. And I see all these other teams that a little flawed, whether it's North Carolina, Kansas losing games that maybe you wouldn't think they would, or Duke, almost getting beat at home by Vermont and losing a couple games. And so I can see how a lot of these teams could improve between now and March and get better. You see all the tools and talent that Duke has, and you can just see how they can get so much better. I have trouble seeing how we could be much better, get much better. As good as Ennis has played, as good as CJ has played, and Trevor Cooney, who's on a record pace 3-point shooting wise. It's a little scary because I don't know how we can get better. Can we get better, Zach?
Forwards can always get better, in my opinion. Whoever they play in that middle spot.
Yeah.
If that player ever became a factor offensively consistently, then Syracuse can be better.
Whether it's Christmas or Peter Coleman.
Christmas has played about as good as he's ever played, I think, for Syracuse the last few games. He had 15 the other,
offensively.
And he played 7 for 8 versus Eastern Michigan, right? I mean, he played.
He had a couple jump shots. He's showing a little bit more.
But versus a big power team where you can just throw it to him on the block, and we haven't really had that in a while.
Eastern Michigan was kind of big. That's why I think
DeShante Riley. He
didn't play a whole lot though.
No.
Well,
I think this Syracuse team runs. I think they're as good in the half court as Syracuse has been in a while. I think they run some pretty good sets. Before it was a lot of just pick and rolls and stuff like that. And this team seems to they set CG up a lot. He runs the baseline. They're screening for him a lot.
Cooney's always
they're looking for Cooney, and Ennis just really seems to get the guys in the place, and he runs a lot more plays, it seems like, than they have in years past.
And they don't run that high pick at the top of the key like they did almost every.
Not every play, at least. They do run the double pick, and but they don't. They have last year they'd run that, and Southern would be the second guy picking, and he'd pop out for a 3. But they don't. They have different personnel, and they seem to be better in the half court this year.
How can this team get better, Brad? Syracuse. How can they prove, or can we? Maybe we can't. Maybe we're peaking. We've peaked out.
I would hope they're not. I would hope they're not peaked. I think there's little things that each of the guys can do. There's the one thing that troubles me just a little bit, and we saw it in the Eastern Michigan game. We've seen it from time to time with some of the lesser opponents. Is they get in these lulls and they stop playing hard for 5 to 10 minute stretch, and it happened at the end of the first half against Eastern Michigan. And
mostly on defense.
I don't think they necessarily have the killer instinct, and I'm not sure too many of these Syracuse teams ever really have. I would love to see Ennis build up more of his leadership capability, be a more vocal leader. I think CJ the same thing. Maybe that's not in their personality, but to really challenge the guys, hey, let's not let this thing get back into a uncomfortable range. Let's kick the crap out of these guys and beat them by 40 instead of beat them by 15. I think that's really what they can learn, because one of these times it might bite them. They let team get back into it, and then they hit a bunch of threes late and lose by 1.
Or they get down 18.
They kind of let Eastern Michigan.
I think that's where leadership comes in, and when you have a freshman point guard, there's a leadership question there. I don't think he's shown us anything that says he can't be a leader, but he's probably a little reticent to take a guy and grab him by the shirt and say, hey, let's do this right now.
Yeah.
I think, if Jeremy Grant's going to be a starter, which I think he's going to be, their bench is going to need to get better.
Yeah, it's true. It's one thing is you hold him back a little bit, and then, but
Benajay.
They don't have a lot of offensive punch coming off the bench. They have some role players. They can be okay defensively, but they don't have a lot of guys that can come in and make a shot.
Well, that's a point for improvement. I think Benajay will improve after not playing basketball for.
I kind of thought he was going to be more of a shooter, and he seems reluctant to shoot the ball, kind of, I think.
Well, I think, like I said in previous episodes, they were grooming him to be the backup point guard, and so they're probably, he's probably feeling like that's more his role. But I see him pass up wide open shots from three, and I'd rather see him take them because he's proven he can make them.
Yeah, I haven't really seen him shoot to him. You know what I mean? Occasionally he's hit a couple threes this year, but nothing spectacular. And coming in, I thought he was going to be a shooter, and he doesn't. He seems to be more of a playing his role, which he's done fine when he's in there. He doesn't hurt him at all, but he's not scoring the ball at all.
Yeah. And one thing that I think that they can improve on is I think Jeremy Grant can get better. He's still a little green. He still hasn't played as much minutes as a lot of the guys on the team. And sometimes he gets a little out of control, does some stupid things, picks up some stupid fouls. So he can naturally get better. In the beginning of the year, he was, shooting the three occasionally.
Yeah,
he's not really shooting from outside too much.
I think he needs another year at Syracuse personally, just to develop, to be the man, and develop a jump shot, because he gets it. He's going to shot fake and he's going to drive to the basket as hard as he can almost every single time. And sometimes he gets himself in some tough situations, but he's so athletic. He's able to score. But in the Villanova game, I thought he was forcing a little bit, and he can get a little out of control at times.
Yeah. Well, ACC opener Saturday, 2:00 on the ACC network. Miami comes to the Dome. I don't know how they're going to get there with this weather. Maybe they're bussing them up, but I'm sure they'll be there for that one way or another. And then on Tuesday, we go on the road for our first ACC road game at Virginia Tech. That's also an ACC network game. And then Saturday, January 11th, at noon on ESPN, North Carolina comes to the Dome. And that's a big one. And then, of course, we go at Boston College. That's an ESPNU game. Pittsburgh is on ESPN2. That's a home game on January 18th. We're going to... that's one of the toughest games on the schedule nobody's talked about is when we go at Pitt in February. But then we go at Miami, and that's a CBS game on January 25th at 1:00. At Wake Forest, Brad's alma mater, a 9:00 p.m. game on Raycom Sports. And then the big one at the Dome, February 1st, ESPN Game Day, Syracuse Duke. And that's a 6:30 tip, in case you were wondering. We're going to step aside for about 60 seconds, hear from our sponsors, and then come right back with some great Syracuse trivia.
We hold on to the things that really matter. Welcome to Generations Bank.
Hi, I'm Jody Torrio. If you're like me, you've got stuff lying around the house that you want to recycle, but you're just not sure how, like broken toasters, vacuum cleaners, or microwaves. At Seneca Meadows, we have a drop-off for those. Bring in anything with a cord, and we'll make sure it's recycled properly through our partnership with 2TRG. It's that easy.
And we're back inside the FingerLakes1.com studio in the middle of a winter storm. The snow is coming down outside, but we all made it here, and because we love to talk about Syracuse basketball. And this is the part of the show where Brad gives us some trivia, usually Syracuse-related trivia, sometimes Syracuse college basketball. But what do you got this week for us, Brad, in terms of trivia?
We've got some Syracuse trivia. We're obviously kicking off the ACC season this week, and so we're going to test Syracuse's history against our future ACC partners. So you guys need to be able to tell me how many of the current ACC, so there's 15 teams in the ACC currently, how many of those 15 teams does Syracuse have a losing record against in their basketball history?
And we are going to, let's start with the Big East teams. Boston College, we got a winning record against. Pitt, I would like to think overall we got a winning record against, although I know that they've certainly beaten us a lot, especially at Pitt. So I'm going to say we're winning record against both of them and Notre Dame. I'm going to say we're a winning record against Notre Dame. So the three former Big East teams, Brad, we got the winning record against?
That is correct.
Okay, now that we got that out of the way. let's knock off some obvious ones.
I can't remember.
We got Miami. We got a winning record against them.
I'm gonna say Duke has beat us more. I know they beat us in the tournament one year.
Yeah.
I don't know.
99 or no, it wasn't even that long ago. But they did. We actually talked about that last week, Brad. Duke, the last time
Jason
we played
Hart,
in the tournament.
Jason Hart.
Yeah, I think that's why I think it might have been.
Or was that Michigan State? I can't remember.
99.
Are you asking, or are you just spitballing?
But we've also beaten Duke a few times. But I would think going back to the 60s and 70s, maybe Duke might have an overall win record. So let's get Duke out of the way, Brad. Let's say Duke's one of those teams that has a winning record against us. Is that correct?
Syracuse has a 2-2 record against Duke in their history.
Oh, what's up, Duke?
We got winning record against Boston College,
Yeah, Notre
did
Dame,
I
and
say that?
hey, all the former Big East teams. we
Virginia
do.
Tech.
Winning record against Virginia Tech.
And
right?
Miami.
I'm gonna say Maryland has beat us more.
That could be. What about Maryland, Brad? Does Maryland beat Syracuse?
Yeah, Zach, that was
Good
a good
call.
call. Syracuse is 2-5 in their history against Maryland.
Wow, a lot of games in the 70s, I bet. Late 70s, is that right?
Yeah, so yeah, the Maryland was 5-0 against Syracuse until the last two times. Syracuse has beaten them the last two times.
In modern
Beat
times.
them in the 2004 NCAA tournament when we went to the Sweet 16
Yep.
and lost to Alabama in a game I was at, which was unfortunate. But they beat Maryland in the second round. And then last time Syracuse played Maryland was 2008 in the NIT second round, an 88-72 victory.
I got a team that from the ACC that I think has a winning record despite us absolutely obliterating them in the Dome a few years ago. I think that Georgia Tech, the Yellow Jackets, have beaten us more than we've beaten them historically.
Not a bad guess. Syracuse is 2-2 against Georgia Tech, same as they are against Duke. 2-2. Last time Syracuse played Georgia Tech was in 2010 in the Legends Classic preseason tournament, Atlantic City. Beat them in the finals. And time before that, they lost in NCAAs in '85. Got stomped.
Yeah, well, that was Mark Price against Pearl, and that was a devastating loss. We had a really, really good team, and it was Pearl Washington against Mark Price. And Georgia Tech, I think, had John Sally. But
Georgia Tech had a great team that year. I think they were a 2 seed. Syracuse might have been 7, something like that.
Pearl's sophomore year.
20-point beatdown.
I think that was Pearl's sophomore year. Are you saying it was 84 or 85?
It was 85, so Pearl's sophomore year.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so
We got a winning record against Florida State.
Yes, Florida State.
and Virginia
Correct.
and Clemson.
Incorrect on Clemson.
They beat us in the NIT. Are we 0-1 lifetime against Clemson or something?
Syracuse, the only ACC team that Syracuse does not have a victory against is the Clemson Tigers. Syracuse is 0-2 against Clemson.
Whew, we owe them this year.
They played them in the NIT quarterfinals in 2007.
Yep.
Lost. And that was the year that Syracuse didn't even give a crap.
Yeah.
And then they lost to him in 1960. The funny thing about that,
Lot of
Pete
history
Maravich's dad coached that Clemson team.
Who coached it?
Pete Maravich's dad.
Oh, no.
Really?
Bit of trivia there.
That's good trivia. All right, so Clemson's got a winning record. Won't last long now that we're in the same conference. What about Wake Forest?
Syracuse is 1-0 against Wake Forest.
Yeah, I don't remember
The only
playing.
ACC team they played only one time.
When was it?
It was in the 2002, or actually it was 2001 preseason NIT
Oh,
finals.
I remember that game now that you mention it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we got a winning record against North Carolina, right?
Ooh, they beat us really bad. Well, first of all, when you go back to like 50s, 60s, 70s, I bet you we lost a few of the games that we might not even remember. But the first Syracuse North Carolina game I remember was Michael Jordan coming to the Dome, and they killed us. But I also remember beating North Carolina to go to the Final Four. I remember losing to North Carolina in the Springfield game, Springfield, Massachusetts tip-off tournament in 87 or 88. And and I remember beating them, North Carolina, more recently in a preseason tournament game. But I think that North Carolina might be a good guess as a team that's beaten us more than we've beaten them. What's the verdict, Brad?
You pretty much rattle off every Carolina Syracuse game.
They never played prior to like the early '80s.
So they played. So the game you remember was at the Dome in 1983, December of '83. Syracuse lost. The year before that, they played at Carolina and lost that game too. They lost both those games 87-64. So they just got destroyed in both those games. So at Carolina in '83, and then at the Dome in '84, lost them both. But they played twice prior to that. So what's funny about both of those, they split those two games. Syracuse played them on their way to the Final Four in '75.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
And in 1957, Syracuse beat North Carolina beat Syracuse. Do you guys remember the significance of that 1957 at all? Testing your historic college basketball trivia at all?
That was 2 years before we won a football national championship.
That really was what I was looking
Jim
for.
Brown on that team?
In 1957, North Carolina beat Kansas in the final in the championship game in triple overtime, and Kansas had Wilt Chamberlain.
Oh, okay, well.
So Syracuse lost to North Carolina in the lead 8, and Carolina went to the Final Four and ended up winning the championship. So 3 times they played the NCAA tournament, and both times the team that won went on to at least the finals, or to the Final Four rather. Syracuse went to the Final Four twice after beating Carolina, and then Carolina
DC
went
versus
to the Final Four
J.R.
after beating
Reed.
Syracuse.
So what's the verdict?
You've listed all the other games. Syracuse is 3-4 against North Carolina.
That's going to change too.
I forgot about that one in '57.
That's going to change too. We're going to turn the tables. Now, what about NC State, Brad? I got to say, I got a bad feeling about NC State. I remember going to the Dome, and Julius Hodge tore us up. And the worst part about that was one of my freshman year, kid lived across the hall from me in Sadler Hall. Ray Randall was his name. Great guy. He was from North Carolina. His family's a big Wolfpack fan. He was only at Syracuse for his freshman year. And so he ended up going to East Carolina. But him and his buddy, big Wolfpack fans, came up for that game, and we went to the Dome, and that must have been 2001 or something. Julius Hodge, and we lost.
I know we beat him down there recently.
Recently, yeah, like 2 years ago.
Yeah,
and I don't remember playing them in the 80s or 90s. What's the verdict on the Wolfpack?
You remember losing is the only time they've ever lost NC State. They're 4-1 against NC State.
Oh, good.
That time, you're right, 2 years ago down in Raleigh.
Okay, there's another one bites the dust. We're all set there. And that's all of them. That's the whole ACC. So we're talking Clemson and North Carolina.
And Maryland. Clemson, Maryland,
Oh,
North
Maryland,
Carolina.
yeah. Well, we won't have to. We actually, how many games behind Maryland are we?
3, so that's probably not going to happen.
We can't even it up this
Yeah,
year before they go to
tournament,
the Big Ten. Yeah, Brad, good trivia. It's good to get this information. Start learning a little bit more about these ACC teams. It's going to be odd as we travel up and down the Atlantic coast this winter. Some new venues, but obviously we've played them all. But we got to get Clemson, Verk.
That's right. We owe them big time.
Let's move ahead to our power rankings. We're going to pick the top 5 teams in the country. I'll go first. Had a tough time with number 5 because I wanted to stick with my undefeated. You got to be undefeated to break into my top 5. But I looked at Oregon, and I looked at some other teams, and I just couldn't do it. I reinserted Oklahoma State, still with only 1 loss. Probably one of the best players in the country. Got them at 5. Got Wisconsin at 4. Word on the street is they're rolling against Nebraska tonight. I got Ohio State, another Big Ten team, at 3. But as impressive as they've been, I really think that it's a next tier to this next 2. Arizona 2, Syracuse 1. I just think that at this point, those 2 are clearly better. Now, you might argue with me Ohio State pulled one out late. So I guess, and Ohio State's undefeated, and so is Wisconsin. But, Zach, you got a power ranking? Be interesting to hear yours.
Wichita State, number 5.
You got them 5, huh? They're one-loss team.
0.
Undefeated.
Oh, they still haven't lost.
Undefeated, Final Four
A
team.
lot of talk about they might go undefeated all year.
Yeah.
That's true. They're into their conference schedule now.
I like them 5. Oklahoma State 4. I don't think Wisconsin's that good.
Even with the big guy that's scoring 40
They
points.
lost to the Canadian team that we beat. So
Carleton?
Yeah.
Oh, they're really good. Carleton's really
they
good.
They lost to them. We didn't. So
That's true.
They're not in my power. Top 5. Ohio State 3. Arizona 2.
Nice.
Syracuse 1. Just because I like Syracuse better than Arizona. But I think they're the top 2 as well. Easily.
Verk?
Michigan State 5. Wisconsin 4. Ohio State 3.
You love the Big Ten.
A lot of Big Ten schools there.
You going to throw Iowa in there?
No. Wisconsin and Ohio State are still undefeated.
Yeah.
I've still got Cuse, number 2, in Zona 1, but Cuse is closing that gap in my mind.
What do they got to do, Verk? They got to go right down in Arizona and beat them in their own gym.
They need a big road win, like Brad said.
How about you, Brad? Let me hear your top 5. I'm really anxious to hear it.
Yeah, you know what? I was going to put Michigan State 5, but like you just commented on, too many Big Ten teams. I can't put 3 Big Ten in my top 5. So what I did, I actually went with Zach on Wichita State 5th. They're doing it all. They're coming off Final Four. Good wins they've got. Because I looked.
William and Mary. They beat William and Mary.
I was I did a lot.
They won at St. Louis, won at Alabama, beat Tennessee, a pretty good Tennessee team, and the coup de grace was beating the Tribe, obviously.
Oh well, yeah. It was close. It was close at halftime too, and that was at Wichita State.
Second half didn't go so well.
No, it got a little ugly.
So I got Wichita State 5. I have Ohio State 4. Still doing it. A nice win yesterday. I have
Purdue.
Wisconsin 3. Still, I've had them high for the last few weeks. No reason to change that. Syracuse 2, Arizona 1. But similar to what Burke said, the gap is closing. I need to see some road victories.
I thought when we beat Villanova in that manner, Brad, that you were going to be all over it. But we'll just have to keep winning games.
It's a game they should win, Home.
But the manner that they won it, I mean, you got to understand, they were down 18 points with about 11:30 left in the first half of that game, and we won by 16. We outscored them by 34 points in 32 minutes.
No, it was impressive, definitely.
And that's a top 10 team. That's a really good Villanova team. To beat Kansas.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. They've beaten Villanova. They've beaten Baylor. Those are 2 top 12 teams whose only loss is to Syracuse, and that says a lot.
Well, I don't need to convince you guys to make Syracuse 2 or 1 because it really doesn't matter. We'll find out at the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm not so sure Villanova is going to be that highly ranked at the end of the year. We'll see. I know they've had a great start, but we'll see.
Well, they're going to be playing in a tough conference this year in the Big East, and I tell you, I watched that St. John Xavier game. And
I tell you, New Year's Eve was great. Fox Sports won. They had all those games.
Villanova
cool.
beat Butler in their first
that was a great
Big
game.
East game in overtime, right?
I believe. At Butler.
Yeah.
Creighton blew out Marquette.
Hinkle Fieldhouse.
I love the Big East Conference,
It is a good
guys.
conference.
I love it.
I like it too.
I have another podcast.
I was watching Providence.
I like it better than I think that's better than the ACC.
It is, and we've always have been. And they can take Syracuse, Pitt, and Notre Dame, and they're still going to be better. I don't know. It's upsetting.
Would you rather watch Seton Hall, Providence, or would you rather watch Virginia, Clemson?
Seton Hall, Providence, any day of the week. Any day of the week.
I don't see that changing in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Plus now you're throwing Creighton, Butler, and who's the other
Xavier.
one? Xavier.
Well, I don't care about that, but
I know.
Adding Louisville is going to be nice.
That's going to be.
That will help. But, yeah, this year, for sure.
And, I watched Tennessee play Virginia. I watched most of that game, and Tennessee
Virginia
killed
was brutal,
them.
weren't they?
Yeah, and
Virginia's been a disappointment. They were preseason top 20.
Well, you know what? We are moving right along here, and I think
Bold predictions here.
Actually, I skipped one of our segments. I got to hit it up real quick. It's our list of the week, and this week I want to figure out our kind of our preseason predictions for standings in the ACC, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I'm going to give you 15-1 my picks. I got Boston College at 15. They're absolutely terrible. They lost to Harvard last night. They're 4-10 or 4-11. They lost to Harvard.
Harvard's good.
Yeah, but they lose to Boston U.
I think
Harvard.
Harvard's beat them 3 years in a row
It's-
now or
it's-
something.
He's gonna be on the. He's got to be on the hot seat.
Oh,
this
God.
year.
Donahue.
Oh,
yeah.
And the old Hobart coach Izzy Metz is on his staff. He left.
really?
He left Hobart,
And that's why they hired near the.
and then
U
after
of
he
R guy?
left Hobart, Neer came out of retirement to coach them. So maybe when Mike Neer is done, Izzy can come back. But
It's pretty disgraceful though. If you're BC, I got Miami at 14. They're rebuilding, and they actually one of their most promising players, freshman, is redshirting after a wrist injury. Virginia Tech 13, Georgia Tech 12, Maryland 11, Virginia 10, Notre Dame 9, Wake Forest, Clemson, Florida State, next three in line. Then I got North Carolina at 5, NC State at 4. NC State's a lot better than I thought they were going to be. They remember they lost everybody to transfers and
he's
NBA.
a good coach. He's a good coach.
And they picked up some transfers though. That you quietly picked up some transfers, and they're playing really well right now. So I got NC State ahead of North Carolina. I got Pitt 3. They haven't played anybody yet, but the people always give Syracuse crap. Pitt never plays anybody. Duke 2 in the Cuse 1. That's my preseason predictions. Who wants to go next?
I'll go. I'll start at 10 because the
rest
other
of the
half
team,
of the league
yeah.
doesn't really matter.
Right.
Clemson 10. I got NC State 9. I'm not overly impressed with them. I know they're a little better than everybody thought they're going to be, but I haven't seen any major wins for them or anything. Wake Forest is kind of surprising. I got them 8, Virginia 7, Notre Dame 6, Pitt 5, Florida State 4, Carolina 3, Duke 2, Cuse 1.
Nice work. Zach, what do you got?
I'm only gonna do the top 5.
That's fine, because honestly, that's all that matters. I think this is a 5-bid league.
You think only 5?
Maybe 6.
Maybe
Yeah.
3.
Yeah, I mean, I like Florida State 5, Carolina 4, actually Pitt 4, Carolina 3, Duke 2, Cuse 1.
Gotta like it. Gotta like it so far, Brad.
Guys, I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to switch it up.
Do it.
Syracuse 1, Duke 2, Carolina. Then I got Pitt. I think Pitt, coming over from the Big East, they're going to see how much easier the ACC is, like we've been talking about. I think it's going to be an easier road for Pitt this year. Florida State 5. I like Notre Dame at 6. I think Mike Bray has demonstrated the ability to do a lot with a little. When they lost Heron Goody, they were almost a better team for a period before he came back. I think without Jerry Grant, I think they'll find a way. So I think they'll stay in the upper half. Virginia 7th. I don't know what the hell happened to them against Tennessee, but I still think they're top half. Maryland, NC State, and then you get to the Dregs. You guys are high on Wake. I don't know where that comes from. They stink.
Nobody high on NC State either.
They got a good record. Jim had them high, so I just copied his.
I got their schedule in front of me right now. They've beaten nobody. The best team they beat was the Spiders, and that was overtime, and the Spiders didn't score in the last 6 minutes of the game.
Due to that incredible stifling Wake Forest defense. Two thoughts on your list, Brad, and everybody kind of I had Pitt a little higher than everybody else. And the reason why is they're going to win most of their, if not all their games at home at the Pete. It's going to be one of the best home court advantages outside of Cameron and in the Carrier Dome. I think in the ACC is going to be Pitt when teams come to the Pete. And as far as Notre Dame goes, Notre Dame this year, Syracuse, Pitt, Notre Dame, they're still representing the Big East in a way. We've always argued Syracuse, if they were in the ACC, they would win this many games. Well, this is the first year, and it's ultra important to me that Syracuse win the ACC in the first time out. And I think it's also says a lot if you can get like Pitt, get a Syracuse 1, Pitt 2 finish, Pitt 3, and Notre Dame too. But yes, like they always do. Notre Dame's letting down the league, letting down the Big East. They basically screwed it up with the football team never, seriously considering joining, and they've never done anything for us in the NCAA tournament. And I don't like Mike Bray. So those are my thoughts on it. But how many bids, Brad, out of this league?
I could easily see only 4.
Well, let's say
I don't think they get any more than 6. There's no way in hell they get more than 6.
well, if a team like Florida State or North Carolina starts to tank in the conference season, it could be 4. You know, but as it stands now, I can see. I think they'd be 5 or 6.
This could be a good thing for Syracuse.
I see it's very top heavy like it always is. I see Syracuse, Duke, and probably Carolina all with 10+ wins. I see a lot of 8-8, 7-9, kind of middle of the road teams in the middle of the league, and then BC is going to stink, and Virginia Tech, and some of the others are going to be 2 and whatever. But I see the question is, does a 7-9 ACC schedule get you into the NCAA tournament?
No.
I'm not sure it does.
You used to talk about that when in the Big East. A 7-9 team in the Big East that maybe is a 19-win team overall, getting in. But this league is too thin. And I'll say this about North Carolina, too. You're going to see North Carolina maybe beat a Syracuse, maybe beat a Duke. You'll get some key wins, but you're also going to see them lose to Wake Forest or Virginia or Maryland. They're going to lose some games, and they could find themselves on the bubble. That's why I got them 5th. I think NC State will beat North Carolina when they play, but it all gets underway, and we kind of start out inconspicuously by hosting a weak Miami team and then going on the road to Virginia Tech, but then it doesn't take long before it picks right up with North Carolina coming to the Dome on 9 days from now. So let's move ahead to our bold predictions. Last week, Brad, it was just you and I. My bold prediction was that Eastern Michigan would take either Duke or Syracuse to the last possession. I was wrong on both accounts. And, Brad, your bold prediction was that Tyler Ennis's brother Dylan would outscore Tyler when they met. He plays for Villanova, obviously. Tyler 20, Dylan 4. Sorry, Brad. Better luck next time.
Loss.
And now Zach's in studio. He is 1-0 in his bold predictions career. So, Zach, let us know what your bold prediction is this week.
I'm going to say B.J. Johnson gets some meaningful time.
Not very bold.
He plays like 3 minutes every game.
That's true. You think he's going to be inserted into the lineup in a close game?
No, I think they might give him a shot if Coleman's out. I think he might be that guy that comes in.
Because it has been Roberson's been getting some minutes.
Yeah,
that's bold.
Roberson's bigger than he's a big guy. Like, watching him play the other day.
You can't tell him apart from Christmas. He looks like Christmas.
He does.
All right.
I see a lot of Hakeem Warwick in Roberson when I see him. He's kind of gangly.
Yeah.
Good rebounder.
Nice.
So you want bolder? BJ will hit 2 threes.
Okay, in one of the next 2 games this week,
Sure.
either at Virginia Tech or Miami. That's bold.
All right.
Because he hit 1 against Eastern Michigan. That's all he can muster. Even if it is a blowout, I'd be surprised if
He
he
played
hit 2.
3 minutes.
He's a gunner,
Oh, is that all
so
he
you
got?
never know.
Stick him in.
We might blow Miami out. Nah, he'll
If he's
knock
out there,
down some
he's
threes.
jacking up threes.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
we can all guarantee that.
Yeah. Verk, you got a bold prediction for
Well,
us?
I kind of touched that. I think Jeremy Grant's going to start.
That's right. Yeah, Jeremy Grant will start rest of the season.
Rest of the season.
Yeah. That's bold because that goes against what Mayheim does, but normally. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. Brad, what's your bold prediction this week?
My bold prediction is that Syracuse will be down or tied at halftime of one of these 2 games.
You just think we're going to come out flat?
Yes.
All right. Well, that's bold prediction because neither one of these teams is.
Will they lose? In fact, I don't even think either game will be double digit, or less than double digits. But I do think they'll come out flat in one of these 2 games.
All right. Well, my bold prediction is that Jeremy Grant's going to have not 1 but 2 double doubles this week, back to back. Miami and Virginia Tech. Coleman still nursing that knee. He might get some more minutes off the bat, and I've just been waiting for Jeremy Grant to kind of, assert himself a little bit more. We predicted preseason before we even started that Jeremy Grant would be the leading rebounder on this team, and he's proven that. Right now he is the leading rebounder average-wise on the team, and that's coming off the bench. I think he's going to put together 2 double-doubles. That's my bold prediction. So 2 for the road here before we get out of here and brush all the snow off our cars and head back home from the FingerLakes1.com studios. Shout out to Coach Scott Schaefer, Texas Bowl champ, Zach, future Syracuse football bright.
I love Cuse football. Season ticket holder.
There you go.
Love him.
He's got the sweet windbreaker on.
I've been to a lot of games the last couple of years. It's it'd be nice if they could fill that place every once in a while.
They couldn't even do it for Clemson. They couldn't even do it for Clemson.
The Clemson game was a big disappointment.
Yep.
But
the outcome and the attendance.
Outside of Clemson and Florida State, though, they played everybody else pretty tough.
yeah, the defense was real good this year. Defense is tough.
And that's
but those other teams just have better talent.
The Clemson, Florida State.
That's upper echelon.
Yeah, I mean,
even if we get consistently middle of the pack ACC, I think that
we're not arguing if Syracuse football is an elite program.
no, not yet. I like Schaefer though. He's
Yeah.
a hard-nosed guy, and I think they got a quarterback the next 2 years who's proven that he can win.
That is
Was
in
he a
that league.
redshirt freshman?
I think he's a
sophomore this year.
sophomore.
Yeah. Just got to get some receivers, man. They got to get some.
And there's plenty of guys in the till, but like Quinta Funderburk was supposed to be great, and he didn't really materialize. And but they are keeping recruiting, and I worry about this scenario. They continue to improve, go to a few more bowl games over Terrell Hunt's tenure, and then Schaefer's off to wherever. Gets an offer, and he's gone.
I think he likes where he's at.
He's going to sign that kid from Aquinas. What do they got, a freshman quarterback or something?
Yeah, he's
Or-
unbelievable.
He won the Class AA state championship. He threw for like 400 yards or something.
15-year-old. I think he's a sophomore.
Sophomore?
15-year-old sophomore.
Everybody wants him. I
Lock
heard,
him
like-
up.
Yes.
So
We
we,
need to- we need-
probably have no shot at him then.
We got to keep those local. Hey, you never know.
He's trying. We're doing a better job of keeping those
I
local
know
guys.
it started with Marone. I know a lot of the local coaches, they really like those guys when they have the big clinic at Turning Stone. And they just said he's a lot more into local stuff. And, I mean, they went to was it Frontier Field? Yeah, Frontier Field. They do some
they
stuff
did
in
some
Rochester.
stuff in Rochester.
Ashton Boyle that was a pretty big recruit that they got.
It
him
was,
from
yeah.
Rush. I mean, I know he's kind of slowly coming along. I think he led the team in receptions this year, to be honest with you.
We can't miss
And
out.
fumbles.
We kind of missed out on
Like Mike Hart,
Mike
a
Hart
kid like
and
that left.
Greg
So-
Paulus originally. I guess we missed out on him. He came back
Or
for his fifth year.
Eshak Williams more recently going to Notre Dame. It seems like when we are going
Kid
up
from
for a
Aquinas
local
went
guy.
to Notre Dame. The defensive end. I think.
Yeah.
Eshak Williams, I think.
Is that
Or
his
no,
name?
he was from New York City. But Brad, I know you're not a college football guru, but what do you think about the future of the Syracuse football program?
I think it's bright. I think being a part of the ACC helps their recruiting, obviously. I think teams they were recruiting against probably played against that, Big East perception in the years past, and now they can ride the coattails of, possibly a Florida State national championship and say, hey, we're in a league that's got a national champion, and that'll only help them, and bowl victories help, and they, it's hard to think that it's not positive. Even, they took a step back in terms of wins this year, but, new coach, new set of expectations. I think they're all signs are positive. Terrell Hunt's going to get better and better next 2 years. I think there's no reason to not be happy about it.
They exceeded what I thought they were going to do this year. I think Marone said, you know what, people were talking about getting rid of me, and then we went on a nice run. We're going to the ACC. The Bills are calling. I'm going to take the money and go. And I thought Schaefer's in a tough situation, but to get to a bowl game first year in the ACC, it's good.
After losing Ryan Nassib.
Yeah, you got to get rid of. They got to get rid of the those games down in New Jersey though. It's like a road game.
Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much.
It's awful. I mean, Notre Dame. How cool would it be to have Notre Dame here?
We'd fill the dome.
It'd be-
We talk about
They're
attendance.
playing them down there next year.
Yeah.
It's like there's going to be more. There'd be more people rooting for Notre Dame down there, no doubt.
It is unfair. And going into this season, they didn't exceed my expectations because I really liked the roster coming in. But I thought Drew Allen, was going to be the guy leading us. But I said, geez, we got to beat Penn State or what was the second game, Northwestern.
Yeah.
I said we got to win one of those two games. We'll be fine. We lost them both. And you look ahead at the schedule after that, and you're like, there's no way they're going to qualify for a bowl. But, he did it.
Florida State next year at the Dome.
Yeah, that should be one that might fill it. But
Hopefully I can stay until after halftime. I didn't make it to halftime of the Clemson game.
yeah, well, that I sat in front of this TV. It's like taking castor oil or cough medicine. Sitting there just watching it, just because I can't not watch a Syracuse game.
Villanova is coming to the Dome next year too. In
Football?
Football.
Wow.
Football.
Well, this will be the last time we talk about football on the podcast because the rest of the year we got some basketball starting Saturday. Miami's 8-5. Before we get out of here, I want some predictions on this game. Keep in mind Miami's 0-1 in the ACC already. They lost to Virginia Tech by 1 on December 8th. If the ACC schedules us in an conference game against anybody on December 8th, I'm going to freaking kill myself.
It's strange.
And I think it's kind of a slap in the face to like some lower tier ACC teams like Miami and Virginia Tech. Although Miami did just come off did they win the league last year? I think they did.
Yeah,
win the
They
league
had a
outright.
great year last year.
Yeah, and they stick them in.
They won the league and the tournament, I think, in the ACC tournament, right?
Yep.
So I just thought that's kind of weird, and I don't know why that happened, but
Jim Larinaga.
yeah, I think he's doing a really good job this year, despite the rough start. 8-5. They lost to St. Francis Brooklyn, a team that we almost lost to, but we did beat them at home earlier this year. In Central Florida, I think it's an easy victory. I don't view Miami, even though this is a conference game, I don't view it much different than Eastern Michigan or any of those other teams that we've been beating right along this December.
78-62.
I like that.
So I think about 15 points. I think they won by 15.
About 15 points. We score in the high 70s, kind of like we did against Villanova. Brad, what's your prediction on this one? You think we're going to be losing at the half, apparently, but...
Well, maybe not this game. It might be the Virginia Tech game. But it's funny. You guys said 15-point game, and you said 78-62. The numbers I have written down on my piece of paper in front of me, I said Syracuse 78, Miami 63. 15-point victory.
Wow.
So apparently
you're just better at math than us. You are a number. You are a number guy. Well, 11:06 here Eastern time. There's probably a foot of snow on each of our cars, and time to go home and go to bed because we'll be one day closer to that Syracuse-Miami game. Zach, thanks again for joining us in studio. You're welcome all the time. And Verk, good to have you back after being off last week. Brad, thanks for taking the time to call in. I think it was a nice show tonight. Always fun talking about a 13-0 team, huh?
No doubt.
Sure.
And thanks, everyone, for joining us on the Upstate Orange Podcast. You can subscribe to our feed on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or via RSS. We're online at podcasts.fingerlakes1.com/upstatehoops. We'll be back next Thursday night at 10 p.m. For my co-host, Brad Connor, Matt Verkey, Zach Young, and our producer, Jeremy Hunt, I'm Jim Sinacropi. It's ACC time!